done praying for you.
So when it comes to the world of rifles, accuracy is king. And in my opinion, the way to get accuracy is with consistency. And since I'm like most people and I can't afford the tooling, I don't have the room for the tooling, and I don't have the know-how to even use the tooling to fidget around with the guns as far as the barrels, the actions, everything else. The only other option is to fidget with the bullets and try to make them as consistent to the rifle as possible. When I first started reloading, I kind of did it the old school way of making 5 of one load, 5 of another load, 5, and going out to the range and shooting anywhere from 50 to 100 rounds at targets, and shooting each one of those 5 at that one at that one, and whichever one had the tightest group, that's the one I went with. Since then, I came across something called Satterlee testing, which you can literally go from shooting 50 to 100 rounds to 10. It's pretty simple. It doesn't take a lot to get started on that. When I first started, I went out and bought the Lee Precision set. It worked for me for a long time. I've still got it. I still use it. It comes with everything you're going to need to basically put the bullet together. You still have to buy the bullets, the brass, unless you have brass already that you've picked up, powder and primer, and dies. You will have to find the dies. But what I found is that a lot of old timers will give you these dies if you know any, or even give it to you cheap, or give it to you really cheap and you just gotta fix something. Also, I see these at pawn stores a lot now. So you might be able to pick it up if you're not looking to buy a whole stack of different calipers. You can probably pick these up at probably a pawn store if you're looking. And you'll also need a chronograph. I went with the Magnetospeed Sportster. This costs about $150. They make a nicer one that's really does exactly the same thing. It's just nicer. That one's about $150. The other one's way more expensive. I went with this bayonet style because the standard style and a lot of the other versions, you shoot through it, which means it has to stand out in front of you, which means if you're somebody who has to shoot on a range, you have to ask everybody to stop so you can go out there and set that up. That you just tinker with it a little bit, put it on the end of your gun, follow the instructions, and shoot all day long and not ever have to worry about stopping anybody. You don't have to go out and buy a ton of stuff to get really consistent bullets. You'll see some dies out there, just literally bullet seating dies that are, well over $100. I've got a couple of them, but what I found is I pretty much just use my Hornaday, my Lees, and my RCBSs more than anything. What I found will get you a better accuracy other than some high-end dies is a good set of calipers and an ogive detector to where you're measuring ogive instead of overall length, which you can get into yourself, but I think that works a lot better than spending the money on the high-end dies, because it seems like I've got some really high-end dies that don't seem like they seat any more consistently than me just doing it myself and checking every single one. And let me show you what I got going on. Let me show you how easy this really is and how little it actually takes to get started. Alright, so let me show you what we got going on here. So first and foremost, you're gonna need the rifle. That's just kind of a given. Second, I use the Magnetospeed Sportster. They make two, the V3 and the Sportster. This is the cheaper one. It's got a lot less bells and whistles, but it does what I want. One of the things that's different is the V3 comes with a bunch of different versions of these little separator pads here. This one only comes with 2. But I've had this for about 4 years and have never wished I had another pad because these 2 have always worked. This one here almost always primarily stays on there. Another thing is the V3 comes with a rod to give you a gap between the bottom of your bore opening and the top of your bayonet. All I did was find a set of aluminum cleaning rods that break apart so that I can make sure my gap is nice and even, and works just fine for me. Going around here, so the other thing you're gonna need is a pad of paper and a pencil. So what I have here marked is 1 through 10, starting at 57.6 and ending at 58.5, and that corresponds with the bullets. And I work left to right always. This would be number 1, 57.6, and this would be number 10, 58.5. Don't worry about these. and that's the way I work, and that's the way it's going to show up on the screen. So this screen for the Sportster is definitely a lot more analog, a lot more 1980s Texas Instrument calculator, but it works just fine, keeps the price down, and does everything that I want it to. So let's get started. So let me show you just about how easy this really is. Like I said, this is the communication box, I guess, for the chronograph. It's pretty simple. The battery stays in at all time. It doesn't come on until you plug it in, and then it goes through its thing. Pretty simple, and this one's pretty damn easy. What it's going to do is it's just going to take a reading every time you shoot, and it does it does a lot of measurements that you can scroll through as far as like the ES and stuff like that. But it's very simple. You shoot, it reads. You shoot, it reads. 1 till you're done. Whether you do 5 or you do 100, you shoot, it reads. It doesn't reset itself. It doesn't do anything like that. So if you shoot 10 today and you come back tomorrow and shoot a 10 of some other caliber, it's going to read it, and you're going to wind up with 20 readings. So it is more that you kind of have to keep an eye on. It doesn't have some of the luxuries of the V3 for sure. But if you're like me and you want to do something, but you just want to keep kind of the budget down, this is a great way to do it. So I always shoot one at a time. I don't fill my mag up because I don't want to get confused where I'm at on the sequence. That's number 1. Put it right back where it was at. If you notice the pieces of papers in there, it just writes down what it is, and how many grains it is. Doesn't have all my measurements, doesn't have all that. One of the great things about doing it like this is you can if you want to, but you don't even have to aim. You don't have to be at 100 yards. You don't have to nothing. You can literally walk off your back porch, go to a 20-yard shooting range, whatever you want. We're not shooting for accuracy. We're just shooting to find out what our velocities are. That's all we care about, is just to find out what the velocities are on that bullet. I aim to the point that I make sure that I'm not going to shoot it somewhere unsafe, so I'm not just wimbly bimbly, just to make sure that I'm not shooting it somewhere crazy. But for the most part, I'm not aiming at all. Just kind of pointing at that direction. As you can see, it's doing its readings. That was number 5. Keep an eye on that. Make sure you're getting, it's actually keeping up. That's it. That's all it takes. Pull it out of 1, put it back in 1. Put it out of 10, put it back in 10. It's pretty simple. Really simple, really easy. What are you doing? That took right around 4 minutes, even with the hiccups. The barrel still touchable, so it's not all that hot. So this thing, pretty simple. It's only got one button right here. Eventually gets to 10. We got 30067. 30067. $29.51. Okay, so now I'm in here in Microsoft Excel. This is super simple. In one column, you need to write pretty much whatever you want, but I write grains. Another one, you need to write velocity. And then you just got to write your grains 1 to 10. So 57.6, 57.7. Okay, velocities. Number 1 was 2951. Number 2 was 3002. Okay, so now we got them all where we want them. Pretty simple. Just come up here, highlight all this, go to insert. I come over here to recommended charts, get the line graph that I want. There it is. So what we're looking for on here is nodes. What I usually do is just wind up covering that. It's still there, but it's just covered up. So what we're doing is we're looking for nodes, we're looking for flat spots, or it should be the most accurate. So I don't have a really good flat spot here, but what I do have is this spot right here. And I'm gonna go with that, which is gonna be 58 grains even. And the reason I'm gonna go with that is because if it deviates a little high or a little bit low on 0.1 of a grain, they're gonna be exactly the same. Should be able to get 58, and then high or low of that grain is going to hit where exactly, exactly the same. So you can fool around on here a little bit. Okay, so we decided to go with the 58 grains. It's a Hodgson H1000, what's actually in there. The reason I chose the 58 grain was because the 57.9 and the 58.1 were identical, and there was only a 7 feet per second difference between the 58 and those two there. So if I do go a little light on the load or a little heavy on the load, I should know exactly around about where it's going to sit and be good to go. But here's the cool thing about it. So here's what I've done. I've gone and I've loaded up 10 rounds of 58 grain, and I'm back out on the range and I'm going to shoot. Now we're not shooting the side end, we're just shooting for accuracy. We're trying to find out how big that group is. So we don't adjust the scope at all, regardless if it's shooting 6 inches off. You don't adjust the scope, you leave it in the exact same spot. But every shot, so all 10 shots, you shoot at the exact same spot. So regardless of where it's shooting, they should get you your group that you're looking for. Sometimes you find your node, you shoot 10 shots, and it's not a very good group. Every gun is different. Every bullet is different, everything. That's why trying to make everything as consistent as possible is such a big deal. But sometimes, yeah, it just, the H1000, I found the node that I was looking for in the feet per second roundabout that I was looking for, but it just might not work out. I might shoot 10 shots here and the group might be, 5, 6, 4 inches, I don't know. And then you try something else, maybe try a different setup with the same powder, maybe try a different powder. It's just a deal, but the idea is that it uses a lot less than the old-fashioned way of doing it, I guess, of just shooting, and damn near burning out your barrel before you even find the load that you actually want. But this is a pretty quick, easy way to do it. So let's get 10 shots downrange and see what happens. Perks of having your own range.
If you can't ignore me, I live alive. You should record this. Look at me flying, so satisfying.
That's it. 10 shots, 58 grains. Let's go take a look, see what it looks like. All right, let's get out and see what we got. All right. So this little guy here, that is from my very first shot when I realized I did not have my ears on at the exact same time I pulled the triggers. So I flinched pretty damn hard. It looks like 2, maybe 3 right here. So the other 6 to 7 would all be right here. Judging that this group here is pretty close to the same as that group there, I'm gonna say this was probably shooting, and they should probably be right here if I was shooting as good as I would like to be for today. But that was 10 shots to find the load I wanted, 10 shots to verify that the load actually works. And now all you really have to do is find you a nice center spot here, measure down. That's how many you need to bring your scope down, measure over. You know, if you've got the targets that have got the pre-described 1-inch lines, MOAs, whatever you want to call them, you can knock that out pretty quick. Another handful of shots to make sure you're on target, and that's it. You've got a worked up load doing exactly what you need it and want it to do. But yeah. So there you go. Thanks to Satterlee testing, you can get away with finding a pretty accurate load pretty quick. You find the load range that you want, you make 10 bullets, you shoot the velocity, you make 10 more at that velocity that you like the most with the node to make sure it's accurate, and you're set. You know, the reloading side of stuff, sadly enough, they're not giving this stuff away, but you can get away with what you need on the pretty decently cheap side. What you need. Now, watching the YouTube videos and seeing some of the people's reloading equipment, it's pretty intimidating. But you don't need all that stuff. What you need, you can get away with getting pretty cheap. Whether you don't mind going to pawn stores, buying used stuff, garage sales, older people that are willing to come off some of their stuff, or just not buying it all at once and just buying little bits at a time, you know, off every paycheck, every other paycheck, something like that. You can get away with doing it pretty cheap. Even if, you know, the chronograph is a little outside your budget, find somebody who's kind of thinking along the same lines and split it with them. You know, the things don't eat. It's not like it's got to stay over somebody's house and somebody's got to feed it. If you need it, you need it, you know, whatever you got to do to get it. If you got a buddy that's got one, ask them to borrow it. It'll do the exact same thing. I heard a guy a while back say, you can't load yourself out of a shitty barrel. And he's 100% right. But nowadays, manufacturers, for the most part, are coming out pretty good barrels. And if the barrel's not doing what it's supposed to do, you can send it back and then re-barrel it. But you're never going to get what that barrel can do if you're shooting semi-spec bullets that you're buying off the shelves at Walmart. It's just not going to happen. Sticking that bullet in that is exactly the same over and over and over again is how you're going to get that consistency. If you go out there and you made 10 bullets that are exactly the same, and you know that thing shoots the way it's supposed to, and all your bullets are all over the place, it's your fault. It is not the bullet. It is not the gun. It is you. But when you're shooting bullets that have a wide span of tolerances, amount of grains that they have, how far the bullet's seated in, brass links, everything else are all over the place. How do you know what you're getting? But that's why I think everybody who enjoys shooting rifles with targets, animals, anything like that, should be reloading. Because on the grand scheme of things, it is cheap. You know, if you're somebody who likes to tune in and zone out, reloading is great because you have to be on top of it. You have to pay attention. You have to kind of forget about all the other BS in life. Because if you don't follow the steps, you don't pay attention to exactly what you're doing, you can get yourself hurt pretty bad. That's why I like it, because everything else just kind of goes away. Just go down in the basement, get my shit out, and just go to town doing it. But that's just my opinion. It's a free country for a little bit longer. You do what you want. Peace.